Games excel against other forms of media in their ability to draw you into their worlds. By having direct control over your character, you're actively involved in their journey. Speaking of involvement, you can be involved in my YouTube journey by smashing that like button, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Now, Tunic takes this notion and turns it up to 11, throwing the player into a strange and foreign world while forcing them to rely on their reasoning to explore and decipher the game's mechanics and the character's objectives. What initially looks like a Zelda clone slowly reveals itself to be a challenging Souls-like game, with a puzzle game wrapped around it. So does the game strike a good balance, or is it a mess of ideas that falls apart? Let's talk about it. At its core, Tunic is a game about exploration and discovery. As you progress, you find pages to the game's manual, which slowly reveals the game's mechanics and the player's objectives, as well as information on the world. On top of this, in classic Zelda fashion, you do unlock new tools that allow you to more effectively traverse the world and unlock new paths for you to venture down. I was hesitant about this game's mechanics at the outset. I don't really enjoy feeling like a game is wasting my time, and I really don't have much patience for puzzle games that I find have obtuse puzzles. This is why I never really got into those old point-and-click adventure games. But after experiencing Tunic, I really have to commend the developers. The path you take through the game's world is both highly curated, while also being open and flexible, allowing you to explore at your own pace and in your own way in some cases. I highly encourage everyone watching to go into this game as blind as possible, and while you're playing it, resist the urges you might feel to look up guides or walkthroughs or solutions. The mysteries of the island and the game's manual are engaging and engrossing, and it really is so satisfying when you figure out the next piece of the puzzle. It can also be humbling when you spend 2 hours stuck on where you need to go next because you somehow overlooked a ladder that was clearly marked on the map, all while your Twitch chat is laughing at you and mocking you and your suffering. While the exploration may be reminiscent of Zelda, the combat in this game is that of a Souls-like. Challenging and punishing enemies await you as you explore the island, but unlike Souls game, the real punishment of dying, which is losing all of your experience on death, is not present in this game, which was an interesting choice. So dying will send you back to the shrine that you last visited, but only costs you about 20 experience, and you can still go and recover that. In the grand scheme of things, it is a very insignificant amount of experience to lose. I thought combat was fine, but I did think it could be a little frustrating at times. Given the game's camera angle, I thought it could be tough at times to know exactly where I was in relation to enemies, especially when it came to attack ranges. Also, when you connect some hits, the enemy would get knocked back and sometimes out of your attack range, so it was hard to really chain attacks together, which you need to do to stagger them. So this all kind of made the flow of combat a little tough to get a real handle of. I did adapt to it, it's not impossible, but it never stopped feeling clunky. I did think the bosses were all fairly unique from one another, with interesting movesets and even arenas to fight in. I didn't think any were too hard or tedious. I don't think there was any where I spent more than a handful of attempts before I took them down, but the fights themselves were still quite rewarding and felt good when you did take down the boss. The game looks great. Graphically, it's reminiscent of the Link's Awakening remake for the Switch, which I also really liked a lot. And I thought it had a pretty solid soundtrack. It kept me engaged, even on my 100th lap around the map, trying to look for wherever that ladder was that I was supposed to find. The game even does that whole Dark Souls, the story is in the lore thing, but it does it well, I thought. The manual gives you enough details, not just on how to play the game, but on what is going on. There's enough context there that you can pretty easily decipher what's going on, at least in a broad sense. as the adventure unfolds, you really do kind of piece everything together. Everything sort of falls into place. And while the story isn't really that complex or deep, I think the way in which it's revealed to you does give it an additional depth and impact that it wouldn't have had if told in a more traditional way. Tunic really was a surprise to me. Looking at it from the outside, it was not the type of game I thought I would like, but it ended up being one of the highlights of my gaming career. This game so easily could have been not done well, especially when you think about what the devs set out to do here, and how the game and the world and the story unfolds. But they balanced everything together almost perfectly. Exploration of both the world and the gameplay are married so well here. It's just a wonderful game to experience and even discuss with others after the fact, because you are given some of that freedom in how you explore it. I know for sure that when I was playing, I went to areas that maybe I shouldn't have gone to first. It was interesting, one, not only realizing that as I got a little farther into some of these areas, but then also being able to talk with my Twitch chat who said like, oh, I went over here first. It allowed for some interesting discussions and conversations. Again, I would recommend that you play this game as blind as you can. Really resist that urge to look up a guide or a walkthrough, and make sure you don't overlook the ladders that are clearly marked on the map, for the love of God, and you will have a blast with Tunic. For a final rating, I would give the presentation a 4.5 out of 5, the story a 3 out of 5, the gameplay a 4 out of 5, with a final rating of 4 out of 5. For value, I would say that this game is just worth it. It is on Game Pass. You could play it on Game Pass if you're looking to get it for cheap. Play it after you finish High on Life, maybe. This was just a great gaming experience, and I think it's worth picking up and playing for yourself. Now, what do you think? Is Tunic really a bad game? Do I just not know what I'm talking about? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please like the video. It really helps a lot. Subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend. Let me know what game you want me to look at next, and I will see you all with the next video.